Greetings and welcome back. This is video number 6, I believe. Is that right? Yes, video number 6 in the Rediscovering Peace series. And this will probably, to the degree that you actually start implementing this material in your own lives and start really testing it for yourselves, which is going to be necessary again for you to even know half of what I'm talking about. I mean, just as an important preface here, remember, it's huge that you've been humble enough to click on the videos and even watch them at all. And it's even bigger than that, that you can humble yourself enough to actually entertain the thought that what I might be sharing with you is indeed accurate, right? You can feel, even though this is a video, you can feel limbically that I'm telling you the truth. You can feel limbically that I've actually experienced this selfless dynamic, and that I've actually tested everything I'm sharing with you, and that it has worked for me now for 12 years running. You know, you can sense my earnestness. It's just the truth, right? And yet, there's a difference between that and opening up enough to allow yourself to believe that it might work for you, okay? And if you can make it that far, which is fantastic, and even entertain the thought that Scaughdt is not some weird genetic anomaly and that this could work for me too, the next step after that is the all-important one. And that is, you know, after the videos are done, you just keep the mantra in mind, be kind when least inclined, and just go and practice it as radically and as repeatedly as you can in your life. Face your fear, toss aside your concern, set aside your desires and your reasonable wants and needs, and just make your life about caring for others, especially when you least want to do so. That's when you're going to actually feel what I'm talking about. Because the words I'm sharing with you and the diagrams are nice. This list is really cool. We're going to have a lot of fun with that now. And yet, this, even if you perfectly comprehend this presentation, right, intellectually, and you absolutely perfectly get it, you're only getting about 20% of it. Because the other 80% will come to you when you feel it. And you'll have this aha moment like, oh my goodness, that's what he meant, right? So that always bears saying at the beginning, okay? That having been said, we're going to move along and give you another set of tools to use, seeing, you know, however you see fit, right? Right. So this video is important because it talks about the lesser virtues, right? Which is essentially, oh, I forgot the E in zone 2. Look at that. Here. It's pitfalls that zone 2 people fall into. Now, we've talked about this before. You know, I saved this one diagram because it's a pretty important one. Yeah, we talked about this in the last 2 videos, okay? And by the very nature of you watching this series of videos, it means you have made the leap, this first leap. You have decided that life is more than just about you. It's more than just about comfort and pleasure. And that maybe there's something more to it and you're willing to learn about it and seek a deeper truth, okay? We know you've come that far or we wouldn't be talking right now. So that's great, okay? Now what will happen, and what has invariably happened to all of the thousands of people, myself included, with whom I've spoken and who have just taken this journey, come this far, is that your ego starts to become, the more you proceed towards the veil of duality, the more you proceed as a person towards that moment where you just might make your life about us instead of me, we instead of me, where you just might make your life about service as opposed to being served, and loving regardless of whether or not you're loved and returned, and giving even if you have hardly anything, and being grateful even when times are rough, etc., etc. The more you head towards making this leap, piercing the veil, and deciding to, you know, make an earnest effort every day to live at least a few selfless moments, if not a selfless life, the more terrified your ego is going to become, okay? And the ego is an insidious beast, and the ego firmly believes that real unconditional love means death for it. Ironically, it kind of does. It doesn't really mean death for the ego. It means the ego doesn't get to hold the steering wheel anymore, and you put it in the back seat and it has to go along for the ride and look out the window and enjoy the scenery. But the ego believes that unless it's steering the car, you and it are going to die, right? So no loving your enemies, you might get killed. No giving your last $5, you might starve. No being grateful for your rough times because you might enable yourself to masochistically want more of them. It comes up with all of these reasons to not go all the way, to not become humane, to just stay a good human. All right? So you're getting closer. You've made this leap. You're getting closer. You're very close, actually, to making this one deciding leap through the veil. Okay? And so what happens is your ego starts thinking up deliciously clever and insidious ways to have you either abandon the quest, right? Case in point, the first time I ever did this, which might deserve a video in its own. I think I'm going to make one in and of its own. But the first time I did this, I was blown away. It was the best feeling to this day I've ever had, the first time I did this. Yeah, back in 2004. And, of course, what happened was then, my ego said, that was awesome, let's do that again, that felt great. And so then I repeated the process, but instead of doing it solely for the other, I was doing it to get the good feeling again, and then my ego said, see, it doesn't work, it was an anomaly. It was just an exception to the rule. You just got lucky, it'll never happen again, it doesn't work, why don't you quit? Of course, I was in it to win it, so to say, so there's never a doubt I wasn't going to keep going, and of course I did, and here we are. But that was what the ego tried to do to get me to quit. And then when it realized I wasn't going to quit, it started convincing me I had already been here and I'd already done this and that I was already doing it via these lesser virtues. This is not a complete list, but this is a relatively complete list of the lesser virtues. So, oh dear, here we go. So, this is page 16 in the workbook, by the way. Readable online or downloadable in PDF form online. Link to my website in the description box. Go to the writings page icon at the navigation bar at the top. It'll be there. You can either read it or download it. Okay? Page 16 is what we're talking about right now in this video. So, what happens is, and this is part of my original journey when I was in Hawaii, which I talked about in video number 2. I made a long list of all these virtues that we have been told are wonderful things to aspire to and to be and to enliven, and then I tested them all rather consistently, rather radically, rather sometimes quite dangerously on paper. And then the ones that always brought peace and joy were these 9 on the left here, which I call the Noble 9, which I won't talk too much about in this video for sake of time. They will be discussed in depth in video number 8. Video number 8. 2 videos from now. We're going to talk about these Noble 9 and what they actually mean. Okay? But coupled with these Noble 9, I also dealt with all of these. These 27, 29 other virtues, which I had been told were also wonderful, and they didn't make the cut. And not only when they were pushed to their limits, they led to discord and or sadness or disgruntlement or disappointment or frustration or feelings of rejection, anger, right? Always when I pushed these to some extreme, it led to division as opposed to harmony, discord as opposed to peace, and fear or selfishness as opposed to love, right? Not only that, but I realized that these were the stumbling blocks. These were the ego trying to convince me that I didn't have to take the final step to selflessness, that it was already a good enough person. It's already good enough. So what I'm going to do here is go through these and just talk a little bit about each one of them, okay? Because page 16, if you're a Zone 2 person, which as we all know, by default, here you are, we're speaking, so if you're watching the video and you clicked on it and want to experiment with or learn about this, you have made the Zone 2 leap, right? And if you are sincere in proceeding, you are going to encounter quite a few of these. And you're going to think, oh, that was great, I did this. Oh, that was great, I'm doing this. And oh, I'm awesome, this. And oh, I've made it, I've done this, right? And it's important that you recognize these pitfalls to get out of them if you're in them, right? And or if you see them coming, to just walk around them and move along, right? And get back to the Noble Nine, which again we'll talk about in video 8 more in depth, okay? So I realize the writing is a little tiny and you probably can't read it, but that's okay. I'm going to read it for you. And again, it's on page 16. I've only made like a couple of small additions, so this is almost a verbatim reproduction of page 16 in the workbook. Okay? So, what I basically did is I put the Noble Nine here, and for each one of them there tended to be 3 diversions, 3 pitfalls, 3 temptations to not go all the way. Acceptance is the first one. It's the black archetype, also known as forgiveness. And what we've been taught is tolerance, compromise, and quitting. Quitting when things get really rough, right? Bailing on unproductive moments or relationships, right? We've been taught that tolerance, compromise, and quitting, for a lack of a better term, can be very good things to do. Now, again, this is zone 2, so all of these things are better, much better, than any zone 1 alternative, right? The zone 1 alternative to tolerance is hate crimes, right? Or hatred, or nasty gossip, or open aggression, right? And of course tolerance is much better than that. But we're speaking in a practical term here about how we can get to humaneness, how we can really let our true self blossom, how we can blow the roof on this life, how we can get the most out of it. And even though these are all much better than selfish zone 1 alternatives, they are all stumbling blocks and indeed pitfalls, prison cells if you will, keeping us from getting to a fulfilled existence. Because tolerance, if you think about it, it's not saying I love you for who you are. It's saying, it doesn't seem like I have too much of an alternative. My way is better. I'm judging you as inferior, but I'm going to put up with you. Right? That's slightly exaggerated, and yet, most importantly, as higher mammals, we have what's called limbic resonance, and even if you don't say that when you're tolerating someone else, that's what they feel. And you can put yourself in the tolerated person's shoes. None of us want to be tolerated. There's not an honest person out there watching that has a goal to be tolerated by others. You know? No, that's on the verge of condescension, right? We want to be appreciated, cherished. We don't need to be agreed with. We want to be honored and respected. That's not tolerance, right? Compromise says, my way is better, but I'll go ahead and just give in, just so you can give me a little bit of what I want. It's harshly stated, but essentially true. That's not loving, capital L, in any sense of the word. And of course, quitting, love just never quits, right? Quitting assumes that there is a goal, that you have a desired outcome, that you know better. You want X, Y, or Z to happen, and if that doesn't happen, and you persist, and don't get what you want, you're going to bail. Whereas love just loves to love. And as long as the one being loved is showing that that love is bearing peace or bringing joy or harmony, right? As long as good fruit is being born, it doesn't matter what you want out of the love. It doesn't matter what you want to have change or be altered. You know, if the love is bearing good fruit, no matter what you wish would happen, you keep loving. Okay? So on the right-hand column on page 16, I've jotted down some ways you can actively return to zone 3 if you realize you've been caught in these traps. And of course, it's pretty obvious. Be actively kind to your enemies is a lot different than tolerating them. Choosing to fulfill others' desires when in conflict is a lot different than compromising and trying to get a win-win out of everything. Just forget the win-lose and win-win and just strive to have the other win, right? Yeah? And of course, persevering through defeat, not quitting. Yeah, if your goal has been to have a certain outcome in a relationship, and your love has brought peace or joy, but not what you wanted, well, you keep doing it, right? You persevere. Yeah, you set aside your own goals and hopes and expectations, right? Moving down to the next virtue, the red archetype is patience, which is actually the opposite of how we tend to define patience today. It's not waiting around for things to get better. Divine patience is detached action. We'll talk more about that in video 8. But the opposite of these are productivity, doing just to do, which we talked a little bit about in the last video. The myth of learning and growth process, right? But I'm getting better. I'm learning more. I'm growing as a person. You know, if I just persist and keep getting better and better and better, someday I will be, right? And here, there's rest and recuperation, right? And as far as the first two go, what it gets down to is when you're caught in a rut of being productive, small p, just doing to do, fulfilling obligation, doing out of habit, busy work, right? The solution is just to do, capital D-O, which is anything kind for anybody. Break your routine. Stop the routine. Bail on it and get out there and just do anything kind for anybody, any sentient being, doesn't matter. Or if you are caught in the rut of learning and the growth process, it's a very common zone 2 trap. Again, you know, less learning, more doing. You don't need to grow or get better. You already are innately a child of God. You were born with perfect knowledge. You're just trying to actualize who you already are. And that doesn't require you to learn anything. It requires you to courageously do for others. And as far as rest and recuperation goes, I'm not against it. I'm not saying never rest and recuperate. I am saying if you're going to rest, make sure you consciously do it so that you will better serve when you stop resting. And if you really want to blow the roof off, especially when you're tired or in pain or ill, and you really want to rest and recuperate, you have the option of choosing to serve, get up and go out and serve in those moments anyway, because that will exponentially raise the power of your service. The difference between you giving a homeless person a hug and sitting down to chat with them and make sure they're okay when you're feeling good and when you're injured and limping or on crutches, it's the same act done for the same person, and it has a light years difference of power, empowerment. The more difficult the deed, the more powerful when done. So you can rest and recuperate when you're feeling down. I'm not going to judge you, and don't you judge yourself. And remember, every time you're tempted to rest and recuperate, that's the moment when your service and kindness to others is the most powerful. And you can always do a kind deed and then go rest later. Just say it. Okay? All right. Generosity, giving is the next noble 9. Here I've written persuasion, and prosperity, and reciprocity, obligation. So with persuasion, a lot of times we have a truth and we really, really, really want to share it with others. And that's, boy, I know about this, that's well intended, and it doesn't really work, and it really doesn't reach its mark, and it really sometimes even crosses the border of arrogance, even if you are quote-unquote right. Certainly, if you ever find yourself in some sort of debate and you are trying to persuade another person that you are right and they are wrong, you're not really giving them your wisdom. You're actually inspiring them to reject the same. Probably best to stop doing that. I speak to myself. I still fall into this pitfall frequently, and I've gotten better. And every time it happens, I forgive myself, and every time I catch it and walk around the pitfall, I feel, I give myself a pat on the back. It's a moment-for-moment, repetitive opportunity to choose, right? So I'm not getting better. I shouldn't say that. I more frequently choose to avoid that pitfall than I used to in the past, right? Okay? Prosperity is a big trap for quite a few Zone 2 folks. The prosperity gospel, if you're into progressive Christianity, is big on that, using the Bible to justify accumulating wealth for yourself, which of course Jesus just abhorred. It's just insane that anybody would ever adopt that mentality and claim that they followed the teachings of Jesus. It's incredible. But people do it, and they use little snippets of the Bible here and there to justify there's enough wealth for everybody, and if I give to the church, God will bless me with money, and whew. That's a big trap. If you are not a Christian, it's quite what is it called? The law of attraction, the law of abundance, manifesting wealth. The Secret was a big problem here. That was a big trap for people. That it kind of conned people into believing that selfishness was just A-okay, and that there's enough for everybody to go around, and everyone can manifest wealth, when, it's just not what it's about, right? We're not here to accumulate a bunch of wealth. We're here to do what we can to spread love and peace, right, and ease others' suffering, right? So anyway, important with reciprocity, if you ever feel like if you ever give because someone has given to you, and or if you give because you feel like that's what a good person does, you're not actually giving. And the way to kind of beat this one is, not beat it, but to return to Zone 3, the 3 tips I've written here are give anonymously. That's a great way to get back to Zone 3, because if you give anonymously, there's no way for you to receive anything back, especially if you can't tell anyone you did the giving. You give anonymously to the beloved, the object of your giving, and then you don't tell anybody you did it for them. Then there's nothing that comes back to you. There's no thank you, there's no admiration, it's just you and your secret and your giving. That's a really good express lane for getting back into Zone 3. Especially when you yourself are in lack. Especially, remember, it's reasonable not to give when you're really low on money, or things, or food. And I wouldn't criticize you for not, okay? And the moment you only have $2 left in your wallet, and your paycheck's 2 weeks out, and you're hungry, that's the moment those $2 can blow the roof off, when you give them anyway. You don't have to. You want to buy a sandwich for yourself with that $2? It's your $2, yeah? And that's fine if you do that, and what you've done is also you have sacrificed an opportunity to do some powerful good. Fact. Right? It's just a fact. Okay? And here I also wrote giving by receiving. This is a tricky one, because folks will use this one as an excuse not to give. And in fact, I'm going to put this one off and talk about this more in 2 videos, because this one needs to go in depth on. I'll reference this in 2 videos. I have to talk more on this one. And if I forget, you can send me an email and remind me, and I'll make an extra video about it. But I think I'll remember. Gratitude is the next major virtue of the Noble 9. And here I wrote victory, which is celebrating our own successes. Now, there's nothing wrong with being grateful for your successes and blessings. Okay, that's fine. I'm all about being grateful for the good stuff, right? Including fellowship with your friends, right? Celebrating your cherished friends and your good times and your successes. Do it. Celebrate. Revel. Be grateful. And real gratitude rejoices in others' victories, right? And real gratitude is grateful for your times of difficulty. Not only because you can just be grateful to be alive and everything else can be seen as a bonus, but also B, because when times are difficult, you are most powerful. When you are challenged, your subsequent choices to love anyway blow the roof off to whoever you give to. And they are not powerful, those same choices, when made in times of your abundance or your feeling good. Okay? So your difficult times are a great blessing. They are innate empowerers of your kindness if you choose to be kind when least inclined. And you can be grateful for that. You know? Then there's, I wrote down silliness, fun and entertainment. Um, there's something to be said for entertaining others, and there's something to be said for not taking life too seriously and just laughing it up. There really is. I mean, it's a beautiful life, and we are allowed to see it as such and treat it as such with lots of laughter and revelry. I'm all about it. And at the same time, when there is a choice between silliness and entertaining others and caring for them, choose the latter. Right? Finally, here I wrote grief and grieving. I'm not saying grieving is wrong. I am saying it is counterproductive. Everyone gets to choose how they grieve. Some people grieve for years. Some people grieve for days. When I've had to grieve recently, the longest I've grieved recently was 3 days when I lost my brother, and that was just me. When I lost a dear canine companion, I grieved for a period of hours intensely, and then I let it go, for the simple reason that grief and grieving is a purely self-fixated. It's a reasonable response to intense emotional loss. It is a reasonable, understandable response, and it's a purely selfish response, and most importantly, a counterproductive response. There's no honor being done for the one who's passed or the one who's lost by your grieving. No one around you benefits by you grieving. You certainly don't benefit by you grieving. All you do is take a bundle of moments when you could be serving others and blowing the roof off this brilliant life, and you spend them wallowing in mourning, right? Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm merely pointing out the fact that it is wasting those moments, and it's counterproductive. And there is no truth whatsoever that it is necessary to grieve to cleanse yourself of the sadness. If you want to cleanse yourself of sadness, go care for somebody else in need. It is impossible to be sad or angry or afraid if you are caring sincerely for somebody else. Try it. It is impossible, right? And that is the medicine for mourning, is honor the life of the past one by immediately going and serving another in need. All right? And we next come to compassion, okay? And which I wrote down here also is kindness. Note that it's not friendliness or niceness, okay? If you're being nice and friendly to people, that's not being compassionate. Compassion feels with them. You have an emotional investment. You care for them. It's much, much deeper than mere friendliness, right? You aren't just friendly to strangers, you care for them. You sincerely speak with them. You touch them on the shoulder. You make eye contact. You ask them how they're doing, and you mean it. You ask them if there's anything you can do for them, and you mean it. And if they say yes, you try to do it, right? That's zone 3, not just walking by with a smile on your face being friendly, yeah? I wrote here pity, sympathy, and worry, right? Which includes mercy killings. I've got another video to make on mercy killings. There's no such thing. Trust me, as far as mercy killings go, if you're really going to have compassion for an animal friend who you think is suffering and wants to die, you need to imagine that animal friend is your own child who is deaf and mute. And you can see that it's suffering, but it can't speak with you. And then you ask yourself, would you kill that child? Because you know that it needs to be put out of its misery. And of course, you would not. You would give that child palliative care. You would give that child pain therapy, and you would stand by that child and be present and caring and loving until it either recovered or chose to pass on its own terms, his or her own terms. And the same is true with a mercy killing. I don't care what kind of animal it is. I've witnessed mercy killings. I even engaged in one. And it was the wrongest of actions. And I avoid that at all costs. Okay? Yeah. And I'll talk more about that another time as well. Pity, sympathy, and worry are not positive emotions. We're taught that if we have pity for someone who's hurt, or sympathy or worry about them, that we're being caring, but actually we are openly and powerfully letting them know that we have no faith in their strength. that we don't think they can transcend their difficulties, that we are convinced that something bad's going to happen to them or they're going to suffer, that we don't think they can handle what life is going to throw at them, right? And of course, that's how those things are perceived, right? And so compassion is always a much better alternative, or just outright caring. You know, if you find yourself having pity or sympathy or worrying about another person, you know, just stop and just beam them strength and ask them if there's anything you can do for them. And if not, cheer them on and let them know that you believe in them, right? That's a Zone 3 response. Vows and commitments are love killers. We think it's a good thing to honor our vows, but what a vow basically says, or a commitment or a promise, it says, I am not loving you because I want to love you, I'm loving you because I've promised to do so. I'm loving you because I signed that marriage contract. When real love says, I'm with you in this moment, I might not be with you in the next, but I'm thankful to be with you in this moment. I'm honored to share this life with you, I love you. Boom. And then a couple hours later, you reaffirm. You say, oh man, what a blessing to be able to spend this time with you. And that is love. Love continually reaffirms itself and has no need for a vow, commitment, or promise. No need. It continually re-chooses to want to love, to want to be present, to want to be invested in the relationship, regardless of which relationship you're in. Honesty is the next one. Cleverness we've been taught to be clever. Clever is actually dishonesty. Sarcasm is dishonesty. Avoid those both at all costs. Politeness, white lies, tact, these are all dishonest. Judgment, including well-intended constructive criticism, right? Abandon it. Unless it's asked for, don't offer it. If someone wants an opinion and you think the opinion might hurt their feelings, don't be tactful or polite. Don't be clever. Be silent. Smile at them, right? Have the courage to do the uncomfortable good deed. Don't cause harm. Say something honest that doesn't cause pain, or be silent. Very simple. That's real honesty. That's courageous honesty. And spend your time encouraging others 10 times more than you criticize them. Hell, 1,000 times more. That's what the world needs. We need encouragers, not criticizers. Heaven knows each one of us is criticizing ourselves more than enough without needing any criticism from anybody else. Okay? Then we have humility down here. The 7th of 9 virtues. We've been taught that indignation, righteous anger, is a good thing, and I understand where it comes from. I feel it a lot in my animal rights activism. Just this rage that anyone would make excuses for or advocate harming an innocent being unnecessarily. That really gets my goat, and it is not helpful when I succumb to that anger. I am not helping the victims. I am not inspiring anybody to stop doing it, and it actually is anything but humble, right? At the same time, subservience and self-criticism are not humility either. It doesn't do anybody any good for you to humble yourself by thinking less of yourself. Real humility takes whatever is and tries to harmonize with it by seeing the self as powerful, by taking every moment of your life, looking at it for what it is, and knowing that there is something you can do to bring more harmony to it. And there always is. There always is something you can do in every situation in your life where you can bring more harmony to it. No doubt about it. And if you pause long enough in each one of those situations, or any of those situations, and really consciously focus on it, you will quite readily see what those things are that you can do. And the step that remains is that you humble yourself enough to courageously leap and do them, right? Which gets to, I'm going to jump down to faith, because those two are tied together. Faith is the 9th value, and faith is not certainty in the future. That's the opposite of faith. Faith is you have no clue that what you're going to do is going to work, but you do it anyway. And here we're talking about faith not necessarily in God or heaven or salvation. We're basically talking about faith in love, faith in humanity, faith in goodness, faith in yourself to bring that peace, to bring that harmony to those moments that need it. And yes, you might fail. You might reach out to someone and they might get offended. You might reach out to someone and it might backfire. Yes, and yet you have the faith to do it anyway. And then you examine the fruit of that tree. And if it does bring more discord, then you don't reach out that way anymore. You find another way to reach out. But you continually have the faith in love and the faith in yourself and the faith in kindness to reach out anyway. Reach out anyway. Yeah? Back up to wonderment. We're taught that maturity and acting appropriately in public, right, is a good thing, that it's good to be sane and normal. These are not good values, especially in an insane society. Krishnamurti had it right. It's actually a sign of craziness to be well adjusted to a sick society. And our society is sick. It values Zone 1 and low-level Zone 2 above all else. It values competition and dominance and judgment, and it frowns upon wonderment. It frowns upon unconventionality. It frowns upon radical kindness. It frowns upon self-sacrifice. All the things that make being human great. Unconditional love. Our society tells us not to do them. It's a sick society we're in, that we have built, and our forefathers and foremothers have built. And so being considered appropriate, sane, normal, and or mature by society is a sign you're doing it wrong. And you need to wake up and start being a little less sane, a lot less normal, a lot less appropriate, and a lot less mature. Be joy-filled. Be uninhibited in your revelry for the beauty around you. Be uninhibited in your love for the people around you. Be uninhibited in the service that you render. Be uninhibited in the empathy you feel for those who are hurting, right? And see the miracle of life. See the soul. See the good person beyond the poor behaviors of your enemies. Celebrate things that are familiar or normal or boring. There is no such thing. If you're bored or see something as normal, you need to look closer, because there's no such thing. Everything is miraculously beautiful, and you're allowed to pause and remember that, and then shout it out and revel it and remind others, oh my God, look how amazing that is, right? That's a great service. It's a great way to return to living in harmony with your true self. And yeah, that's it. The rest of these, I didn't cover a few of them, but I'm fine with that. I keep wanting these videos to get shorter and shorter, and they keep getting longer and longer. But I guess I should expect that, because there's a lot of material to cover. The point being, now that we've covered page 16, you can use it as kind of a checklist. Now, most of these pitfalls, Zone 2 pitfalls that I just covered and that are listed on page 16 of the workbook, they're routined for you. A lot of them are routine. Every one of you has, of those 30 or 29 that are listed there, or however many are listed, I think it's 28, 29, at least 10 of them you are doing without even thinking about it, if not more. I know I am, right? I have to catch myself, because I just willingly jump into them, because they are patterns of behavior. They are responses to certain situations that I've learned since my childhood, and I do them automatically. And so it's important that you regularly reference that list, and reflect back on your day and say, which one of these did I fall into today, and really see yourself, envision yourself responding differently the next time. Maybe even look at some of these while you're remembering what you did, which pitfall you fell into. Maybe reach out and activate some of these alternatives in that moment. You don't have to be efficient or quick in your response. You can do it after the fact. Every moment is a fresh chance to remake yourself and allow your true self to shine forth, regardless of what you've done in the past and regardless of what you might do in the future. Every moment is a chance to reawaken your true self, right? And I have faith that this video will provide some valuable tools for you to help you do that more in the future. All right, love you guys again. I have faith that the next video might be a little shorter. If not, the material kind of dictates, and I'm sure you guys can hang with it regardless. Loving you, and hope you have a great evening, and see you in the next video. Peace out. Peace out. I keep missing the off button. Peace.